finally played in another tournament. It's been a while since I played. It's probably been a month and a half since I played in one of these tournaments, and it was called the Power Chess Tournament, and there was 3 sections. Unrated, if you didn't have a USCF rating, under 1200 if your classical rating was under 1200, and the open section for above 1200 rated players. Now, I don't play very many classical games, and so what happened here was I was at the top ranking of the under 1200 rated section, which is great. Like, I want to win the tournament, so this is my best shot at winning it. So we're gonna look at our first game here, and the first person I play is about an 8-year-old girl. And as a 1094 in my classical, I haven't played in a few months, so I'm much better than my 1094 suggests. I think I'm gonna cream this whole competition. And my first opponent is rated 393 in classical, so I think I take this a little too flippant, I guess, to describe what happens. But let's take a look at this game. She's white, I'm black, and she goes e4. Now, e4, I always play the Caro-Kann, so we go into an exchange variation, which I'm super comfortable in. And I rush a little bit too much with this queen to b6 move. I think that it would have been better if I was able to get my bishop out here, or close this up and work from there. I should have closed this up and really kind of started attacking here, but we don't do it. She attacks my queen. I just bring it back. So I waste a move. She's got a knight on the rim. It's not terrible. And then with that bishop, I'm like, oh, I can now win this bishop, not realizing that you can just come back and defend the bishop here. And that's exactly what she does. She finds the move, and we're still a pretty even game at this point. So I say, hey, I'm going to take this knight off the board, and she sees that. So I take the knight, she takes there. She has checks, so she's got one move ahead. We take, and I win the pawn here. So I'm up a pawn, but the evaluation bar still has her at a slight advantage. But nonetheless, I still think I'm in a great spot. She's threatening checkmate. This bishop's here. It's not going anywhere. I think I'm going to be fine. I go and attack the knight, and then I take there, and she doesn't take the queen. Doubles up the pawns again. I'm in this game just like, wow, I'm easily going to win this game. It's gonna be no problem at all. Now, for some reason, I went with this pawn move, and I think the better move was to go and take this queen to, like, queen takes d4 here on the d4 square, because it kind of gets my queen in an open center file, and I have all these different lanes going. But I didn't do that. I did this instead to get my bishop out. The queen comes out here, and, you know, of all the things I could do, I played the worst move possible, which is to get my queen here. I'm looking to take this pawn. I'm going to look to take this pawn and then get this check and get this bishop. However, they get this here, the rook here, and I did not take my time on this. I think I left the clock with 27 minutes left, and she finds the checkmate in there, and that's how I lost to about less than a 400 rated player on my first game of the tournament. So I was pretty upset with it, and so it was pretty upsetting. So that was my first game, which was a complete disaster. I finish off that, and we go into my next game, and I'm like, all right, I gotta buckle down, take my time in these positions, and make sure I win. And so I'm playing white here. We go e4, and he goes e5, and we're like, great, we're gonna play an Italian game. And he makes this move, which automatically has me winning because I take this pawn. He attacks there and completely forgets that my bishop is now supporting this knight, and I fork the queen and the rook. Queen goes to defend, and I castle here because if I take this rook, queen's checking, and there's a potential for, you know, some problems. So I castle, which was the best move by the engine. Queen takes his pawn, and then I pin the queen to the king. I take there, and I take there, but, you know, he had the fork here. Not a big deal when I'm up as much material as I am, so I just make sure I preserve the queen. This knight is now really not going anywhere as long as I have this queen eye in this. So I put the king in check. Pawn comes down here to defend the check. I then put the king in check again, and we're just kind of running the king around and making his life as miserable as possible. I move my knight out of the way because I want to get this in the game. And I think once his knight moves, he has this rook move here to take my knight, so I move my knight there. He then brings his knight in here to attack my queen, not realizing that this knight now defends his bishop. And because of that, I got the check on here, and I got the checkmate on the next move. So second game, I feel like I crushed. And I'm hoping that the top players draw a little bit in this tournament. So we go into the third game, and I'm black playing against this kid that won his first game, lost his second game, and I would say he's probably about 8 years old as well. And since I saw him win his first game, I didn't take it lightly. And so he starts off with e4, and I go into the Caro-Kann. and he pushes forward for like a delayed exchange variation. And so I go into my prep, take, and then the weirdest thing was he took here instead of taking with the queen, damaging this castle structure. So I was like, oh, I'm in a really good spot now. I close this up so he doesn't pawn sack and mess up my pawns, which would have been real annoying. And then he makes a3, which I think was the silliest move because he's not developed anything at all. So I get my bishop out, and he then brings his bishop out here. I bring my queen out, and then he goes to attack my bishop, and I get the checkmate. And the worst part about this win is I felt really bad about it because after he went outside, his dad yelled at him for getting checkmated in 8 moves. And he didn't show up for the last game of the tournament, which was a real bummer. He will never make that mistake again. I don't know if he will make that mistake again. He might. He was just like, oh man, that's like a scholar's mate, and took his book, like jotted out so happily, and then his dad yelled at him, and I felt really bad about that. So we're going into this last game of the tournament, and I promise you this is the best game of the tournament. He goes e4, I go into our Caro-Kann variation. And before this game started, I was talking with another player about how I never really play the classical variation ever. And I get into a classical variation, and we go into the normal thing, but then he goes d3, and it's kind of out of the theory for the most part because I get this pawn. He attacks my queen. I put the king in check, and I didn't take this pawn because I thought there was too much counterplay with the rook coming down and taking this b7 pawn. So I drop back instead. He went to attack there, and I just trade off this, bring my queen back to safety, and I'm thinking I'm in a good position from here on out. So I bring the knights out. The queen's coming to look at the king, and I say, hey, I'm going to stop anything you have here because I don't want you to really like target this pawn, because after knight comes here or here, this is a checkmate threat, or a big threat nonetheless. Bishop comes down here, preventing any development of my bishop until I get this kind of protected. And I wanted to get my knight out and trade these knights out. Because he's attacking me, I just want to take any threat from him away. And he goes to attack this b7 pawn, which I say, great. Well, now let's start attacking this bishop and developing myself. So I'm pushing this pawn up to attack this bishop. He goes to attack my knight. I just get it out of the way. No big deal. He goes here, and it swings in my favor because you have knight to e2 and then taking the bishop. And then when the knight takes back, the queen takes back. I missed that. And I just went for the bishop there, which is fine, but it's not as good as it was that it could have been. Pawn comes here. I bring the knight back, attacking this bishop, and the rook goes here. So I get my queen out of the way. No big deal. Queen then goes here, which I thought was a really bad move because the queen's not really threatening anything, and he's just putting himself in the corner of the board. I castle, get myself out of danger, and he brings this knight in, and yeah, this kind of looks scary, but it really doesn't have anything because his bishop's not that great anyways. So I just trade off his bishop. He brings the queen in, and then I go here, attacking here and here. However, I could have been in a lot of trouble because queen to b3 check, and then taking here gets the queen involved, and then when you get the rooks in, I was in a lot of trouble. He misses that though and goes queen to e4, giving me maybe back a slight advantage. I look to trade off the rooks, and because he moves here, the queen is no longer just protecting this pawn, so I'm just like, okay, I'll take it. Why not? And now he's threatening checkmate. Not a big deal. I push here. We trade off the rooks. For some reason, he goes over here to b1 to protect this pawn. Not the most worrying thing in the world. I was thinking about taking this pawn, but I don't know. I wasn't too I didn't think it would be very good because after the queen gets back, I didn't like that move. So I moved my queen to the center of the board and was just looking to attack this pawn here on f2 and create some problems for white. He comes there to attack my bishop, and so I just protect it, and I want to trade the queens off the board. And so after trading the knight, he takes the queen, I take the rook, he takes the pawn. We're in a rook and pawn endgame, but my structure is a lot better than his. I have 2 big structures of pawns. He has 3. And so I just get my king in the game. He pushes forward, and I push this because I don't really want to blow up the structure. I want to keep the structure intact. He brings the rook in. I get the king in, and then he starts getting his king in, but it's a little too late because by the time his king arrives, I trade off the rooks, get my king in opposition. He brings it back, but this is locked out. Like, yeah, you can go here, which he ended up doing, but when I go here, he can't really do much because I just have so many pawns here. And so he pushes forward. I go here. He realizes he can't protect both sides at once and calls it a game, because even if he was to get over here and get this pawn's not going anywhere. And I really just have to focus on getting a pass pawn here. So I win my 3rd game, but it wasn't enough because I ended up tying for 2nd place. But because of my strength of schedule being a lot lower than the other guy, he ended up getting 2nd place and getting his nice little trophy. So I ended up not winning this tournament, but had a lot of fun, and I look forward to future tournaments in the future, you know? If you like that video, please like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I come out with all sorts of chess content every week, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.